Prior to the discovery of bacteria, how did people explain fermentation of bread, wine, beer, pickles, etc.?
I know a little bit about this oddly because of studying the law of alchemy. Doctor, we only need an explanation for fermentation via microbes because we assume everything is lifeless until proven otherwise, but ancient peoples didn't assume this. The way they understood the world assumed that everything was alive and imbued with spirit until proven otherwise, and the spontaneous fermentation or decay of foods appeared to them to be the evidence of this.
The Swiss alchemist Paracelsus Philippus Aurelius Theophrastus Bombastus von Hohenheim, who lived in the Renaissance period, didn't think of fermentation as being carried out by organisms that were alive, but thought of living things as carrying out fermentation in their various organs. Digestion, the bodily functions, etc. were thought of as your organs all doing some kind of fermentation.
Fermentation and distillation were cutting-edge technology in those days, and just as analogies are made between our brains and computers nowadays, in his day, analogies were made between various human organs and bodily processes and fermentation. With regards to some aspects of digestion, this wasn't too far off, since our guts have an entire microbiome that coexists with us.
Our gut microbiome literally ferments the fiber in our food to provide us with certain beneficial compounds like butyric acid and propionic acid, while others make us gassy, and make us fart out gases produced during their fermentation. It's not hard to see where the inspiration for this concept came from. For example, pregnancy was thought to be a fermentation process where the mother's womb fermented the semen of the father, thereby converting it into a baby.
As far as I understand of his concept of what was going on, fermentation was a natural transmutation of substances. Gases were produced from wet solids, and sugar was turned into alcohol, or in the case of lactic acid fermentation, sugars were turned into acids. All of this was mediated by a living substance, though they didn't necessarily understand the mechanism nor that there were individual cells of yeast or bacteria doing the work, or even mold in mold fermented meats and cheeses such as salami or brie.
And the substances that did the fermenting inherited something from their ancestors, and separate cultures could thus be preserved in order to propagate fermentation with the qualities that they exhibited. In the human sense of the term, culture is what we inherit from our society that shapes how we do things and what sorts of things we do.
This same term got applied to fermenting substances such as leaven because each lineage of yeast or starter dough or whatever continues to do what its ancestors did, each with its own cultural characteristics, which we perceive as the flavors characteristic of each lineage of wine or beer yeast, or yogurt or cheese culture, or sourdough. The same way, our term spirits, in reference to alcohol, comes from this period's view of fermentation. When you ferment, the foaming bubbling ferment was referred to as the body of the ferment.
When you boiled it, you killed the body which would not ferment after being removed from boil, and was thus dead, and the vapors that came off of the boil were thought of as the spirit of the ferment as it departed the dead body. This spirit was what they believed they were condensing when they distilled alcoholic ferments into hard liquor. This is why the term used to refer to distilled alcohols is spirits.
This is also why concentrated alcohol was referred to as aqua vitae, the water of life, because it was believed the life of the ferment was captured in the distillate. And each type of thing you ferment had its own character, its spirit ether, which was thought to be the essence of the thing, just as a person's spirit was a sort of essence of the person.
It was thought that the spirit ether of an animal or person or substance or thing was the fifth element, after the other four classical elements that were thought to compose all things: air, water, earth, and fire. That is why we have the term quintessence, coined by the French alchemist Jean de Roquetaillade. Quin means five, and essence means element. The quintessence of something was that thing that gave the substances of a thing its essential character, the spirit of that thing.
In alchemical lore, this was conflated with highly concentrated alcohol produced by repeated distillations. The alchemical way to capture quintessence is to do 7 sequential distillations, usually of an alcoholic ferment, after which you would supposedly have the purest of the pure essence of the thing you're extracting. To this day, when you distill out the fragrances of plants, these distillates are referred to as essential oils, meaning the oils that contain the essence of a plant, its characteristic element.
The world view that the world was full of interconnected life, and was imbued with spirit, even to substances like leaven and fermenting dough, is called anima mundi, living world, world soul, and it informed the various ancient world views of the pre-scientific era. And even today, you might be surprised at how many people operate with this worldview. In Japan, a lot of people seem to operate under the Anima Mundi worldview as part of the culture.
For example, Marie Kondo thanking things for their service to pay respect before getting rid of them because they no longer spark joy when she tidies up the home of one of her clients is an example of viewing all things as alive and imbued with spirit, and therefore deserving of respect. You can see that yeast was recognized as a substance that grew and spread even in the way it is spoken of in the Bible, for example, Matthew 13:33, 1 Corinthians 5:6-8, Galatians 5:9-13-3a33-2 1 Corinthians 5:3a6-8 see Galatians 5:3a9 version CSB.
But as far as I can discern, at least in Europe, where alchemy dominated, the proto-scientific natural philosophy of the day had it that these substances carried out the processes of life, and were in some way alive, and even had spirits in them.